Welcome to the Firestone Williams Report for February 2013. We're glad to be here on this still snowy, yucky Ottawa day. So, Scott, you were out of the winter for a while. You were in Costa Rica.
I was. It was wonderful getting out of this weather and going to, I think we realized when we got there, I think it was a 60-degree change.
60 degrees.
Yeah,
is that Fahrenheit or Celsius? Got to be Fahrenheit. No way.
Yeah,
Celsius.
It was minus 20 here, and it was plus 40 there.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's pretty warm there. Plus 40 is hot.
It is, but where we were, right on the ocean, it was actually quite nice. A little bit dangerous in the sense that when you're sitting in a pool or by the beach and drinking your margaritas, but there's this nice ocean breeze coming in that wicks away all of the heat and sweat. You don't realize you're getting dehydrated as quickly as you.
Yeah, or drunk.
Yes, well,
Not that we mentioned anything like that. So whereabouts in Costa Rica were you?
We were staying at the Rio Guanacaste.
Okay.
It was absolutely beautiful, 5-star resort, amazing. It was in a nature preserve, which was actually very cool. They gave us the speech, though, the very first day, and this was the funny part. They actually have moats around the facilities themselves to keep out, we'll say, the slithering aspects of
there'd be a few jungle inhabitants you wouldn't want to be up close.
And we had monkeys 20 feet outside of our window in the trees and everything, and the kids loved it.
What's the chatter like at night? Can you sleep? I mean, it's probably pretty noisy.
You shut the door, it's air conditioned, you don't really hear anything, and then as soon as you open it up, it comes to life.
But
the very first day they gave us the speech that you can't go for beautiful romantic midnight walks on the beach because the jaguars are hunting on the beach at night because it's turtle season.
I see.
They're very environmentally conscious. They had all of these little fences around the turtle nests. But then they also gave us the warning in this bay that is teeming with life because it's turtle season. They said, you can surf, you can swim, do not boogie board because of the amount of sharks in the water right now.
Wow.
So it was that was a little.
And are there any saltwater crocodiles?
I don't think so.
Because my family and I were in Belize and in the islands off the coast, and their main problem are the huge saltwater crocodiles that come in at night and they eat man's best friend. The dogs go down and the dogs they sit there and they come up near the beach and then on the beach and the dogs are barking and then they back off into the water and the dogs follow them into the water and they practically swim or enter the huge jaws of the saltwater crocodile. That's the end of the dog.
Right. Lovely.
There you go. So we're joined today, lucky to be joined today by CEO of Minto Group, Roger Greenberg. Welcome, Roger.
Thank you for having me, Bruce.
I'm so glad you're here and on the Firestone Williams Report. Now, Roger, you were in Costa Rica just before Christmas.
At Christmas time, actually.
At Christmas.
So it wasn't quite 40 degrees, but it was very lovely. I think the people there are extremely friendly. They're very tourism not dependent, but focused. There's no army. They disbanded the army something like 70, 80, 90 years
Save a lot
ago.
of money that way.
So all the money that they save, they pour into education and tourism. So the ecotourism in particular is very strong. So they have lots of activities to do, zip lining and horseback riding and whitewater rafting. So there's all kinds of activities. Or you can just sit by the beach, whatever you want to do. I mean, both were great activities.
Did you have any margaritas?
We might have had one or two. Actually, I had more mojitos than that.
Okay.
Mojito man as opposed to a margarita man. But
and so, were you there? Was it in business or pleasure, or a bit of both?
The family.
Just the family.
Actually, extended family. We try to go somewhere at Christmas each year for all of us, and so I think we had, at varying points, probably 22, 23 of us all together.
That's a lot of fun.
Lots of fun. Lots of kids, lots of fun. So it was really nice and relaxing.
Yeah, I've heard only great things about Costa Rica. Now, as the CEO of Minto Group, you've been there now for I think 20 years.
22 years, actually.
22 years. And you told me on the phone, I guess a couple months ago now, that you've been saying to your wife for 22 years, if I can just get through the next 6 weeks, the 6 weeks after that are going to be fine.
Well, I've been saying that to her since I think as you know, I actually practiced law for a brief period of time. So I've actually been saying that since 1985, that I've just asked the big man upstairs.
How's that working out for you?
Get me through the next 2 months, because my schedule is just like absolutely jammed, but I look out now in July and August and I don't have a lot of meetings.
Right.
It's the power of fooling yourself, because obviously when June comes around, July and August are 100% booked. So
right.
So it's very, very full, very busy, and I'm looking forward to October when I'm scheduled to pass the mantle of CEO leadership to Michael Waters.
Yeah, that's a big change for Minto. And just before we went on the air with this show, you were saying to Scott and I that you wanted this transition to be a little bit different than the last one. Can you talk a little bit about the last one?
Sure.
and how you came to be the CEO of Minto Group?
Sure. Well, Minto, as you and many of your listeners may know, is a family business. It was started by 4 brothers, but it was really 2 brothers that built up the company over
right.
the years. My late father, who passed away in 1980, and Irving, who passed away in 1991. So in 1991, when he passed away, we had absolutely 0 succession planning. Irving didn't raise the subject, and we're all too afraid of him for us to raise the subject.
He did have a bit of a temper, I think.
Oh, more than a bit.
Yeah.
But so since he didn't raise the issue of it was sort of unseemly. He had cancer and he was struggling with his health, etc. And so it was unseemly for me to sort of raise a topic. I figured if he wanted to talk about it, I would talk about it. Since he didn't talk about it, I didn't talk about it.
Right.
When he passed away in January of 1991, there was 0 succession plan, and that had been talked about and put in place. Minto had no board of advisors,
wow.
no board of directors, anything. It was really, we used to jokingly call it the boss plus 6. The 6 family members working in the business, because Irving was clearly the boss, and on more than one occasion, Irving looked me straight in the eye and said, "Kid, it's my way or the highway."
Right.
And now that was in the context of a variety of different roles, but keep in mind that at the time, Irving owned 50% of Minto, and I, as the sort of the leader of my family, in a sense, we owned 50%. So it's
wow.
kind of unusual for one partner to say that to the other partner.
50-50.
50-50.
Wow.
But as you knew Irving, you knew that was entirely consistent with his personality.
I did.
We accepted that fully. So, that situation is one where I think my father passed away when he was 57. Irving was 61 when he passed away. Bad history of heart disease in my family, so I'm now 57. So we resolved, probably 5 years ago now, that we would enter a fairly intensive process for succession planning. I had 2 brothers in the business with me, and myself, our longtime consigliere, Eric McKinney, and we wanted to enter into a planned and deliberate succession process. We now have a board of directors. We've had that for about 4 or 5 years now. We involved them heavily in the process. We involved change consultants in the process, a gentleman out of Toronto by the name of Richard Hossack in particular, who's an executive coach, an executive leadership change individual. It's been very helpful in the process, and it's really been a lot of time and a lot of effort to take us through the point where my 2 brothers have now transitioned out of day-to-day operations, and I will follow them in October. That having been said, it's not like we're selling our interest in the company. I'm still going to be chairman of the board. My brother Alan is still on the board of directors. Alan and Robert are both on what we call the business advisory committee. So what we view it as really being is that as shareholders will be partners, so to speak, with non-family leadership to agree upon the strategic direction of Minto, and then we hand over the operational implementation to the non-family leadership led by Michael Waters. He will then implement the strategy, and he will be held accountable. He and his team will be held accountable, and there will be hopefully a good alignment between their interests and our interests to make sure that if the company is successful, then the management team will be successful. If the company is not successful, I don't want to think about it.
I understand that. Tell us a little bit more about Michael and his background.
Well, Michael is an exceptionally strong individual. He has a terrific personality. He's very engaging and very outgoing, and extremely bright. So he's well ahead of me.
Is he a corporatepreneur?
Well,
corpreneur? I'm not sure if I'm saying
yes,
it right.
He would be. Yes, a corpreneur. I would call him a corpreneur.
We call it intrapreneur, somebody who's got the entrepreneurial
right.
skill set but works within an established company.
Yeah, right. So that would fit Michael.
That would fit Michael.
Michael's background is in the accounting field. He actually joined us About 7 years ago, I recruited him directly from a company out west called IntraWest.
Yeah, of course.
Where he had a background in accounting but was working in the development side of things. We hired him to be our CFO. So
but
he was.
Yeah, let me just ask you this though. Okay, we talked a little bit about Michael as an entrepreneur, a corepreneur. You know, if I look at Minto, to me it's still a very entrepreneurial company.
Yep.
And if I look at say some of the recent transactions, you know, OSEG, Ottawa Sports and Entertainment Group, very entrepreneurial initiative. The purchase of the JDS Uniphase building, I thought was very entrepreneurial, taking an advantage of an opportunity that presented itself. So can a company, I know you're very passionate about transitioning family companies from one generation to the next, this will be the third generation for Minto, but can a company retain its entrepreneurial edge if it has professional management?
It will be different. I mean, there's no question. I think, you know, some of the things that you just talked about are some transactions that I'm not sure, left alone, that Michael and his team would undertake.
Right.
It's one thing, I would say what Michael has done in his role as CFO, and then for the last 2 years he's been the head of our land development housing group in Ontario. I mean, the brothers, with their own money and support from our fellow shareholders, we were risk takers in the sense of, like, we just sort of naturally understood the market. And so you know, yes, I guess we would get studies sometimes to support what we're doing, but essentially my brother Robert would be classic. He just knew the market.
He just knew the market.
Knew it. He just knew it. He didn't need studies to tell him what to do and how to pricing. He was out in the marketplace. He drove by our competitor sites. He had his flavor in the market. He lived in the city. He just knew the Ottawa housing market cold. And so Michael and his team will not be as big risk takers. I don't know if a JDS would come up, whether they would take that risk or not. But the good part of it is, this is why we have, like, it's not like I'm leaving.
Right.
So like Michael and I have an excellent relationship. We only talk about 6 times a day. I think I spend more time with Michael than I do with my wife, at least waking moments anyways.
Yeah, right.
So like we talk about things. We talk about things always. I think he'll be less risky than we will. But what he's brought is a methodology and a way of looking at things and thinking about it. We probably did not respect.
So he would have money. He would have more discipline. I understand that. Yeah. But you know, I'm an entrepreneur, not on obviously the scale that you have been, but still, it would be a shame, really, in a way, to lose that edge. Because I mean, if you look at OSEG, people have asked me about Lansdowne for years, and I know it's been both a curse and a blessing in your career, Roger, but people have asked me about it, and I often say to them, I said, let's look at what the alternative is. And the alternative in a city like Ottawa, and I love Ottawa, but it has its faults. Mm-hmm. The alternative for a city like Ottawa is not, do we have a better option on the table? The option that we have on the table in terms of alternatives is to do nothing. Mm-hmm. Because we've been doing that for a long time. Mm-hmm. So, the alternative is we go forward and we see this incredible revitalization of Lansdowne Park under whatever terms and conditions have been negotiated, or we do nothing. That is the real alternative. Mm-hmm. Would you agree with that?
Well, I think Ottawa is a very processed city. Perhaps it's because of the multiple layers of government that we have here, right, and the number of people in the city. It seems as if, if the process is done well, then everybody's happy. No matter what the result is. The result could be good, the result could be bad, but if the process is good, then everybody's happy. And the opposite is, if they smell that the process is not quite so good, or it's not to their liking, then it's irrelevant, again, whether the results are good or bad. They don't like it. So with Lansdowne, where we were not satisfied or convinced, however you want to call it, that the international design competition was going to go forward and result in something. We thought it was going to be another 5 years of wastage. We had an opportunity to bring a CFL team and get going with things. And we just thought that this design competition was going to take an extremely long period of time with resulting of nothing. And so we made an unsolicited proposal to the city.
Right.
Now, in hindsight, obviously you can look at it and say, maybe we should have done things a little bit differently. But there was choice for the city. Perhaps it's not wise to contradict on air.
That's all right. It's been done once or twice.
The lead person. there was a choice, there was competition, because as you may recall, Eugene Melnyk did put forward a proposal for an alternative open-air stadium in Canada.
Yeah, next to Scotiabank Place.
Yeah. The city considered the two.
Yeah.
They did a study, and they looked at the pros and the cons, whatever. The city made the decision to support the redevelopment of Lansdowne as opposed to building a new open-air stadium in Canada, for I think a lot of very good reasons. And then they sat down and negotiated a transaction with us that I think by any objective means comes out looking absolutely tremendous to the city. Your question could well be, as on an entrepreneurial show, why would you have accepted a return so far below what a normal entrepreneur would look for in this project? It's all public documents. Our return, if it works out, is going to be 8%.
That's pretty low for entrepreneurs.
And that's a low return for an entrepreneur.
I agree with you, Roger.
That we're done.
If I may, so the entrepreneurs listening to this show will understand my point and my take on it is none of the entrepreneurs that I would mentor and advise would look at a return on equity of less than 22%.
Right.
We just wouldn't.
Right.
And you know, it's one of the reasons why entrepreneurs can't play in some areas, because rates of return are just too low, and there's too much risk for them. So that would be a historically low.
Very
number.
low, and so you say, why do it?
Yeah.
And the reason is because we get two returns.
Okay.
The one return is hopefully the financial one.
Right.
The second one is a community return.
Yeah.
That to see what's going on, to bring professional football back to Ottawa. I mean, John Ruddy, Jeff Hunt, these are passionate football guys.
Yeah.
John Pugh, Bill Shankman, they're passionate soccer guys.
They are.
So to be able to announce last night, and to have the commissioner of the North American Soccer League up and confirming our status as a franchise, we're going to start play next year. So
that's exciting.
It's very exciting.
Yeah.
And you're in front of, I don't know, must have been 200 kids there last night.
Yeah,
and you
fun.
see, going across, how kids from the area have made it through to the national soccer team, and then some, John, through his Fury team, has, I don't know, something like 22 graduates playing professionally somewhere in the world.
Wow.
Now, so for those kids to be able to come and to see professional soccer being played in Ottawa, that's really powerful. And we're very fortunate with the Senators, we're very fortunate with the 67s, not so fortunate with the football right now, not so fortunate, with soccer, whatever. So, we wanted to bring that back and hopefully, have Ottawa seen once again as a sports town.
But can I remind you, Roger, something you said to me a few years ago, and times change and people change their views. But when the Senators came up for sale, I thought it was a pretty good a deal for Eugene. He bought the team and the building and the land for $120 million, and he got $13 million in playoff money, because there was about $13 million in a separate account in cash. Always nice to have $13 million in cash, right, Scott?
Hey.
Yeah.
In my wallet right now.
Right there. So it was about $107 million for the team and the building, and the replacement cost. I don't know what they would charge today for an NHL expansion franchise, but if they ever do get one in Toronto, they're talking $400 million. So just the franchise alone could certainly be north of $200 million, and the building today probably $400 million. And so you said to me, Bruce, it's kind of an interesting deal, land, building, team, NHL. It's a big deal, I guess, for Ottawa. But to be in a building, if the team isn't doing well, and to have 20,000 people chanting Minto sucks would not be a good result. So now you're involved not in one, but two expansion franchises, NASL, the Ottawa Fury, FC, and a yet-to-be-named CFL team.
Right. Well, the good news is that the front guy in the football and the hockey is Jeff Hunt.
Okay.
So Jeff can take all the glory. He loves the press, and he loves having his picture on the front page of the Ottawa Sun. So any accolades, I'm happy enough to let Jeff have all the accolades if we do well, as long as he shoulders all of the boos and the hisses when we don't do well. I think the difference is a couple of things on a serious note. It is a time frame difference.
Right.
Because what I was doing and what I was prepared to do back 6, 7, 8 years ago is different what I am today. Another difference is there are 5 of us in OSEG, and they're all in their own right, they're significant, deep players in the Ottawa marketplace. John Pugh is an incredible gentleman with a deep knowledge of soccer. We wouldn't be doing soccer if John weren't part of our team.
I think that does make a difference, yeah.
So he's huge. He's got the Fury organization behind him. And Bill Schenkman has a strong knowledge. Bill is a partial owner in the Millwall team in the English Champions League.
Wow.
So Bill has a deep passion and knowledge for soccer. John Ruddy played soccer.
Football.
Played football.
Yeah, he's a football guy.
Football guy. Played football, helping to resurrect the Carleton Ravens. Has a strong sporting knowledge. Jeff loves everything sports, so it doesn't matter. The guy just lives his life.
And I've been asked about CFL.
That's happy.
I understand.
So I don't have to do that stuff.
I've been asked about the CFL football and can it work in Ottawa, and I would not bet against Jeff Hunt in operations. He is one of the great operators. I served on Jeff Hunt's advisory board the first year he had the 67s, and about midway through that first season, I said to Jeff, "You don't need me on your advisory board for the 67s. I think the Sens need you on their advisory board for the Sens." He's that good. I really have a lot of respect for Jeff Hunt. But I want to turn to you, Scott, and ask you a question. If you were advising somebody, and they were going to name, not that they are, a CFL team, the Red Blacks, what would you do to build that brand?
Good question. I mean, it's, we were having a conversation just before the show started. It's an interesting scenario because in naming anything, it's incredibly difficult because it's always a very personalized
We have an example
scenario.
Of that last night. Or yesterday, I went to the naming of Gus DeCalli's team, the Tomahawks.
Which he's now pulling back.
Is he pulling back on it?
That was on.
Oh my God! Well, it was 24 hours or less as the Tomahawks, because the Tomahawk is a basketball move, right? It's a double-handed dunk, but he's getting a lot of pushback by people who think it might not be, perhaps politically correct to name a team in 2013, the Tomahawks. So sometimes you name a team, the Ottawa Fury, the Ottawa Senators, and you get a pretty good reaction. Sometimes you don't. I was asked back in the day when we were naming the Senators, "Oh, that's a boring name. Why don't you change it?" Well, that was an absolute non-starter. We were not going to not name the team the Ottawa Senators, given the fact that the Senators played in the National Hockey League until 1933, had a wonderful history and tradition. They had won 9 Stanley Cups, some say maybe 10 or 11. It's a great history and tradition, and of course the Senate goes back not to the Ottawa Senate, to the Senate of Canada, but of course to the Roman Senate, and has a wonderful tradition and history. So there was no chance that we were going to back off that name. We love the name. But
do you
there
think
you are.
that would be different today in the age of social media?
I don't know.
Because as we were discussing, right, is that we all know the same, right? Opinions are like something or other.
Yeah, we won't put that on
right?
there.
But
Everyone has one.
But now with social media, it's interesting that not only do people get to voice their opinion immediately,
right?
There's obviously the we'll call it a cultural viral nature of this type of thing, where people, they tend to band together when they start seeing this type of thing happening,
and they pile on.
They absolutely do.
There's a lot of piling on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Poor Gus, I think.
And and when you're talking about naming something, it's immediately you're going to get those opinions. I think like anything in brand, right, is that as our company always states, there's so many people that think everything from names to logos and all that kind of thing is brand. It has nothing to do with brand whatsoever.
I did not know that.
And there's only 2 sides of brand. There's the message you market, and then living up to the message you market. So it's the idea that when you're talking about a brand scenario as such, it's does the name really make a difference? I mean, obviously it does if somebody's offended by the name.
Yeah.
But I mean, aside from that, as you just stated, right, there was people that didn't like the Senators, the name the Senators, that kind of thing. And now, hockey season, there's flags on everybody's cars. They have that, they take pride in everything from the colors to the logos to everything else. But why? Because the brand is built around something far more than just a name and a logo.
Yeah, no, I get that.
I agree with him 100%.
Yeah.
If you think of our company's name, Minto, nobody knows who Minto is, where, whatever.
I don't actually know.
But
what is it?
It was Lord Minto, who was Governor General of Canada.
Oh, yes, of course.
1896 to but nobody knows that.
Nobody knows that.
Nobody knows that. But what you said about it's what you do with it, and then do you live up to it, and do you do like you create a persona that surrounds it.
But could you rescue the name Tomahawks? I mean,
no, because again, what I would say is he said it exactly right. If it offends people, like the name, like a name like Minto is I mean, it doesn't mean anything to anybody. But no one's going to get offended by it. No one's going to get excited by it. But then you create the brand, you take the brand, and then you have to make sure, and this is what we do with all of our staff, we have a logo that says, be inspired. That's, we're trying to make sure that our staff live our values. We have a code of conduct, statement of values that we promote constantly with new hires and then throughout the year. And we make sure that people try to live up to the brand all the time. So you support the brand. In and of itself, the Minto name, it's a meaningless name. No one knows where it comes from, as I said. But you're supporting it, and then you have to make sure, and then if you do things that hurt it, then you're in trouble.
Right.
Well,
okay, I get that.
I mean, and again, if we talk about names, I mean, look at my company, Ivero. It's a made-up word. It's half English, half Latin.
Right.
It's not even a real word.
You better spell that for people because they'll think it's I as in the letter I.
We're not an Apple ripoff. It's not the letter I. It's EYE, not. But it's funny because when I'm on the phone with people, like say, can I get your email address? It's like Scott at Ivero, and they're like, no, it's not an I.
You have to spell it.
But it's, again, it's just I mean, that's a really odd name. You would think it would be somewhat hard to remember, yet, not to toot our own horn, but we've become
go ahead and do it.
Well, no, but we've become a very well-known
you have.
marketing communications and branding company, and it's,
Amazing.
we're very successful and have a lot of really big companies that are clients. But again, it goes back to your point, right? When we talk about brand unto itself, it's, as we tell all of our clients, when it comes to that two sides of brand, it's the unfortunate living up to the message you market, which is where most companies fall down.
Yeah, no, I am a late convert to the branding theory, and I learned a lot of it from you, and I learned a lot of it from Erica Godwin, the assistant director at explorim.org, how important that brand is in creating trust and all the things that you talked about, Roger, the vision for the company. I think if a CFL team were to be named the Red Blacks, I think they'll have a nickname similar to what happened with the Ottawa Senators. Nobody calls them the Ottawa Senators, they all call them the Sens. I think the Red Blacks would be called the Reds. Could you build a brand around that?
Well, you can build a brand around anything as long as you're living up to the brand expectation.
And it's not offensive.
Right.
If it's offensive, then you have a real problem.
But again, right, here's the thing, is that, please excuse me for saying so, my job is to play devil's advocate 90% of the time as a marketing person. And interestingly enough, the first thing that hit me when you said Red Blacks, well, if somebody is angry at the word tomahawks, well, Red Blacks, really? Okay, so suddenly there's, and not to, but is not somebody going to come out of the Twitterverse and say, oh, well, now they're talking about, Native Canadians and
First Nations
Canadians
people.
And First Nations,
and the problem is that until we actually confirm that that's the name, and we lay out colors and logos, etc., and people will begin to realize that it's colors. It's not colors of people. It's primary colors. And if you look back,
and it's the Ottawa colors.
That's the whole point. If you look back through the history of Ottawa, every major team in Ottawa, their primary colors have been red and black. Senators, 67s, Rough Riders, the Ravens, and going back in history,
a long time.
A long time.
Over 100 years.
So yeah, somebody might accidentally think, what are we talking here? But like there will be no confusion. It's two colors that we're talking about. If and when we ever confirm that.
If and when.
Yeah.
But at the same time too, is like our approach, is that, again, when you're building brand as such, it's also that concept that I don't know how far you take this, but we actually, because everything that we do is based on behavioral science aspects, we build these large documents of brand persona scenarios where it's you're talking about all the different aspects that make up a human persona that is applied to your target demographic and all those kind of things. So it's, when you are building brand, as we were discussing, names and logos and the like are usually sort of the last kind of concern as such, as long as you're making sure that you hit those cognitive markers that are going to make people believe in and emotionally attach themselves to the brand as it builds.
And then we try to do it, particularly with a condominium, which each one of the ones that we do has a particular persona attached to it. We try to come up with a logo and a name and all of that right up front, early on in the process, and to make sure that everything that flows out from it is all consistent with the persona that we're trying to attract for that particular condominium.
Well, I'm glad you introduced the subject of condominiums. Are you surprised, Roger, at how the Ottawa market seems to have matured, following in the footsteps of much larger cities like Toronto, with a downtown condo market that's quite active. And I think I heard yesterday that Minto has bought a very large site on Rideau Street, and is going to go downtown with another major project. And I mean, you've done them downtown, and you've done them in the West End. I think the tallest building in Ottawa is the Metropole.
Yeah.
So, are you surprised?
Well, no, because I think there's an ebb and flow to these things. I mean, don't forget. I mean, there were condominiums in Ottawa. 1968, 1969
right.
we built, and we built downtown. We
right.
built out we built Britannia. We built Ambleside. I mean, so we built
right.
condominiums all over, Meadowlands, etc. We built the Carlisle in 1985. So
right.
I mean, it's not like I think the condominium sort of went out of vogue for Ottawa because transportation is so easy in this city, and there still was a very strong attachment that people have to their backyards.
Right.
So whether it's townhouses or small singles or larger singles, what's happened is as I think as the price of housing has gone up, transportation's gotten a little bit more difficult. We have a lot of young people coming into the city. There's been a resurgence in the condominium market over the last, say, 5 years.
Right.
But it's very. I think it's pretty specific area. You're seeing now is more of a maturation of the product. So it's coming out of a few cores that would have been in the market area, and Claridge has done very
right.
well there, and others. And you're seeing now some more projects being built. But a lot of it has been driven by investors, because the rental market, under rent control, etc., there have not been, I think with very few exceptions, there have not been very many rental buildings, pure multi-res rental buildings being built anywhere. So I think a fair bit of the growth of the city and the tenant profile has been taken up by condominiums that where 30, 40, 50% of the units are actually being occupied
wow.
by renters.
Right. Right, and that's subject to boom and bust, is it not? I mean, that would be more subject to boom and bust than perhaps buying to own and occupy.
Well, again, it all depends upon jobs. I mean, and what we're seeing now in the slowdown in the Ottawa marketplace is directly related to the federal government's cutbacks, both actual announced and ones that they are planning to and have yet to announce. So there's a slowdown, in the marketplace the last probably 9 months or so. Over what was, and it probably won't turn around until the local economy strengthens and the federal government gets through its layoffs, and hopefully everybody starts growing again. And
you're active Minto's active in Toronto and in Florida and other markets now, but in Toronto I read that there were, I think, 147 tower cranes in Toronto, 50% more than New York City.
Yep.
Is Toronto overbuilt?
I wouldn't say so. I think what's happened is the capacity of the industry to deliver the sales that were being done wasn't there. The number of homes actually sold in Toronto over the last, say, 15 years has been fairly consistent. What's changed very dramatically in Toronto, for a variety of reasons, the provincial government's establishing of a green belt
right.
and other activities like that, where commuting distances have gotten so far, is that while the total number of housing units being built each year is actually the same, the proportion between condominiums on the one hand and single-family houses and townhomes on the other hand has completely reversed. Where it used to be 70% low-rise, 30% high-rise,
right.
it shifted to being 70% high-rise, 30% low-rise.
Right.
But the labor pool hasn't been able to make that shift. So the delivery, Toronto had a couple of years ago had something like 25,000 high-rise units sold, high-rise condominiums units sold. They can't produce those number of units in the 1 year. So instead of having a delivery 1 year out or 18 months out, as you would have for a single-family house,
right.
instead delivery gets 3, 4, 5 years out. So what we're seeing now in Toronto with the number of units under construction, it's really as a result of that lag in being able to produce those units. Most of those units that are under construction now have been sold with 20% deposits. What's happening is in the new market now, those buildings have been released in the last, say, 3 to 6 months. Yes, because of a whole variety of circumstances, not the least of which was the finance minister's change in the mortgage rules last summer, made it a lot more difficult for first-time home buyers to buy. So the new home selling market now has absolutely declined compared to last year. And again, it's going to be dependent upon, where's the Ontario economy going? The economy has cooled. So if the economy cools, there aren't as many jobs being done, then people are going to double up. Young people are going to double up. They're going to move back to their parents or whatever.
Yeah.
It's going to diminish demand.
Well, my wife and I live in a townhouse built by Minto near the Ottawa River. And it's fairly old. I guess Mr. Irving probably built it, but we really love it. And we sold our house in Canada Lakes, which was 7 bedrooms and was on the golf course. Our kids, we had 5 kids, mother-in-law, nanny. They all grew up, and so we're in a little townhouse, and lo and behold, a daughter comes back from overseas. She moves in with us. Then another daughter gets into a fight with her roommates, moves in with us. And then my oldest daughter's boyfriend from the United Kingdom comes to visit. He's living with us. And we got this little townhouse, and I don't know how many people. We got 5 people and a cat.
Right.
So, I see what you're getting at. I mean, they call it the boomerang generation.
Absolutely.
I think we're seeing that. So
Absolutely.
I get what you're saying. I think you told me some years ago that you had quite the experience in 2008, 2009 in the Florida market. That the market was a good one for Minto, and then it kind of stopped in the 08, 09 crisis in the United States. How's the Florida market doing now?
Well, I'd say it actually lies. The housing market in the U.S. probably was in absolute crisis from 2006 through to 2000. I'd say even probably mid-2012.
Wow.
And just the industry as a whole, across the board, was absolutely decimated. I think the statistics that we've seen, and I know it's confirmed by our bankers, is that 70% of the home builders in existence on January 1st, 2005 were out of business by 2009. So just decimated.
Amazing.
And the labor force, I know for Minto, for example, we had 350 staff in 2005. By mid-year last year, I think we were down to 82, 83.
This is in Florida.
In Florida.
And how many staff do you have in Ottawa and Toronto?
We have 1,200 overall.
1,200 overall, but obviously a significant change in Florida.
So Florida, though, since about last June, I would say, in my view, I think the market hit a low point first half of last year, and it's absolutely rebounding. We are seeing a lot more traffic. Our sales are up. Our closings are up. We've hired 20, 25 new staff to accommodate the increased volume. And so we're building on both coasts now. We used to build only on the east coast of Florida. Now we're building the east coast and west coast of Florida. And market conditions are absolutely improving. Prices are up, margins are improving, and people are buying land. A lot of people in the Midwest and the Northeast are coming to look at Florida again. Prices dropped 35%.
Is that? Do you think that's a reaction to what we saw? And from a personal perspective, is that our company actually built a big real estate foreclosure site where you could just search nothing but foreclosures. Right. And this was, probably 4 or 5 years ago we built that. And it was. But do you think that's a rebound from that aspect, where there was property that went so cheap that now people are starting to buy up that, and then it's
2 factors. Number one, the Florida market, and I only know the Florida market, so I can't speak about other areas, but certainly in Florida, it priced itself out of existence. Like, it was just the price increases through 03, 04, 05 were astronomical. And so it had to reset itself. Prices dropped anywhere from 35 to 50%.
Yep.
For Canadians, it's even better, because
our dollar went up.
The dollar went up by 30%, so it's even less than that by relationship. So I think that's number one. So the prices were reset. And then number two, Florida's an economy. It still has not recovered all of the jobs that were lost in the recession of 2008. So the absolute number of people working in Florida today, even with the recovery over the past year, and the unemployment rate has gone down, but a lot of people left the state. So in terms of absolute numbers of people employed, it's getting better, but it's not quite back to where it was. And the third is the production of new homes. Clearly the U.S. as a whole was overproducing homes for about 5 years. It went up dramatically. Well, as high as it went up from 2000 to 2005, it's gone down that and then a lot more. So that on an absolute level, the level of production of housing in the U.S. is well below its stabilized level. So gradually over a period of time, properties are going to get absorbed. So yes, there were a lot of foreclosures, and they've been bought. They've been bought, in many instances, they've actually been bought by investors. There are funds that have been created. There's an IPO that just went out I think maybe 3 months ago. Its sole purpose was to buy foreclosed properties and to rent them out, business plan, take it out for a number of years, and then resell it in a higher marketplace. So between people buying them individually and people buying them, investors buying in bulk to rent out, there's been a lot of absorption of those foreclosed houses.
But Roger, Minto recently bought quite a big portfolio outside its traditional markets. It was in Ontario. You'll have to tell me the name of the city, but it was a portfolio you purchased, a rental portfolio that you purchased. So Minto must have confidence in the rental market, at least in Ontario.
Oh, absolutely. No, we've done two things in the past 3 years, as we've tried to expand in terms of our business profile, as you can expect. Housing itself is very cyclical, and I feel badly for your readers, your listeners.
They'll know what cyclical means.
They can't see that. So the housing is
goes up and down.
It goes up and down. The income property marketplace is also cyclical, but not as volatile.
Right.
So it moves up and it moves down, but it does so in a flatter curve. What we're trying to do is as part of to try to balance against those is to build up a stream of fee income. Management fee, asset management fee income. So what we've been doing the past couple of years, the property that you're referring to that we bought.
Can you tell the listeners? Absolutely. It was London?
London, Ontario.
Yeah. And it was a pretty big purchase.
It was a big purchase.
How many units was it?
2,200 units, I'm going to say.
Rumored to be $200 million.
150, north of that.
North of 150 million?
No, north of 200.
North of 200, okay.
But what we did there differently is we brought in 2 pension plans as our partners.
Right.
So we're only a third of that transaction.
Right.
So
very different.
So we are, what we're doing is, we're using what God gave us between our 2 ears in terms of managing, property management, asset management.
Yeah.
But we're only putting in a third of the capital needed.
So you're leveraging it.
We're leveraging our capital.
Yeah.
And having 2, highly regarded pension plan partners. That was step 1. Step 2 was last year we launched our very first multi-res fund, where again, somewhat similar, but where we have a fund where we're 15% of the fund, and we have 6 partners, all institutional, and we bought, it was a $500 million fund, so it was $200 million of equity, $300 million of debt, and we have properties in Ottawa and in Calgary. Ottawa, Toronto, and Calgary.
Okay.
So that we bought. So again, what we're trying to do is balance the cyclicality of our development side of our business,
right,
with the more stability of the income producing side. And on the income producing side, we're trying to lever, and we're saying we don't have to be 100% owners of our property. We'd rather own, say, 20% of 10 properties than 2 properties 100%.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think your risk profile is completely different.
Completely different.
I get that. That's a big change in the business model. I'm not sure if Irving were talking to us today, he would understand that.
No, well, he'd understand it, but he'd never do it.
He would never do it.
No, he wasn't a partnering kind of an individual.
No, he was not. I had a great experience with Irving years ago now. He invited me to come and see the Minto Place Hotel that he was building at the time. And he had, I think, an office there for a while.
He did.
In a suite. And I went up there and I was looking for Irving, and he was down on his hands and knees in the WC, in the bathroom, and he was measuring something with a ruler. And he was saying something about the plumbing. I can't repeat what he said on the air here in the show, but he was not happy with what he had found in terms of how the plumbing was working. The measurements were a little bit off. He was a detail-oriented individual.
1985, we had a family wedding in New York. We had no idea what he was planning, but he dragged his poor wife. He was there for 4 nights. They stayed 4 nights in different suite hotels.
Right.
And he invited us the next day to each one of these who were working the business, and he said, and he would invite us into the room, and he said, okay, critique this room. What's right? What's wrong?
I could see.
And what it was R&D, very personal R&D for what was to become Minto Suite Hotel.
Wow.
And that's how he would learn.
How do you feel about the commercial real estate business? I mean, Minto is certainly known, at least in Ottawa, as a home builder and also for obviously the rental portfolio. But you've been strong in the commercial sector for at least a couple of decades. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about the commercial market here in Ottawa?
Well, again, it's going to relate a lot to the presence of the federal government. I mean,
right. You rented the JDS Uniphase space building, all 900,000 of it, I think, to a federal client,
well,
the RCMP?
Effectively, it was a capital lease with a sale at the end.
Okay.
So the RCMP,
They'll end up owning it.
they'll end up owning it. They get it for $1 at the end of 25 years.
Okay.
But it's okay. I mean, we bought it well. We did very well with them. We're property managing it throughout, and we're very happy with the transaction. And you know, it was risk-free at the end. You're done. You're done with the federal government.
Yeah.
So we you know, as part of Lansdowne, we have 100,000 square feet of office.
Right.
So and that's Minto. We
Wow.
separately from an ERFO process, we bid and won that one.
To me, Roger, the toughest market is the office space
Yep.
market. You know, I work with Century 21, and we do lots of retail, and we love industrial. You know, we're very active in land. Probably my least favorite thing to do is office space leasing. I do it for some of my clients because they need some help in that area, but it's probably my least favorite thing to do.
But Minto Place, it's 100% leased.
Wow.
Like we may have in the 900,000 square feet in there, maybe we have 4,000 square feet vacant, maybe.
Wow.
And I have to think about
That's pretty
that
low.
there.
Yeah.
So you know, we're feeling good about the office building.
So 100,000
We're-
square feet at Lansdowne.
In
Who are the
addition-
kind of the tenants that you think would go into space like that?
I think there are a lot of businesses in the glebe that are really squeezed into some small offices
Yeah.
they have
Mhm.
there, and they're looking to expand a little bit. We may get a little bit of federal government presence, because if they're looking for new buildings, you know, we're going to target a lead silver, lead gold for the building.
Wow.
You know, and in addition to that, it's going to be like, it's really going to be a lifestyle, because there's going to be 360,000 square feet of retail.
That's cool, yeah.
Underground
And there's
parking.
lots of entertainment, obviously.
Everything. So it's
Yeah.
going to be, it's not going to be your typical business profile who wants to be downtown with what the downtown amenities are.
Yeah.
It's more, there are tenants in the surrounding area who are squeezed.
It's interesting you mention that, because it's one of the things I actually wanted to ask you at the beginning of this, is that as we were talking about Ottawa and the view of Lansdowne, and you know, there's people that are happy with it, people that aren't happy with it, and you know, I don't mean to slag Ottawa in any way. I mean, it's been my home for 23 years. I love the place. I love the
That's your
people.
nature.
But
You said you're a contrarian.
It is.
Like
No,
to go
but here's
90%.
the thing. No,
He's the Johnny Cash man in black.
Yeah, but here's the thing, right? Is that there is a level of, we'll call it, complacency in Ottawa, I find. Is that-
Absolutely.
and I know that some of the discussions I've had with business owners in the glebe have been very polarized, in the sense that, you know, I have a very good friend of mine that owns it's Joe Mama Cycles, and you know, he's really smart guy, really smart entrepreneur. He looks at this retail space that's coming into Lansdowne as, well, this is going to be amazing, because there's all of these people coming in to that area now. It's going to boost foot traffic throughout the glebe as long as I market properly, and it's, you know, he looks at even the sense of, I hope there's a competitor that goes into that space from sort of we'll call it more
That
of a
would be
national kind of scenario.
Very unusual.
Because,
Ottawa.
but he looks at it as, like, say for instance, like, you know, because he's a bicycle store. If, say, a Sports Experts was to go in there and start selling bicycles, realistically, he could have the idea that, oh my God, what's going to happen? You know, it's there. But his attitude is, well, no, this is great, because this enables me to differentiate myself even more, boost sales even more, capture more people.
If you look at Westboro, you've got Bushtaka and Mountain Equipment Co-op. Are they not like across the street from each other? And I think that's
Actually there are probably 4 or 5 outdoor stores now in that area.
Yeah.
If I wanted to go out
Yeah.
and store stuff,
Yeah.
I'm going to go to Westboro, because if I
Yeah.
can't find what I want at one, I'm going to
Yeah.
go to the other, because there's Trailhead.
Yeah, yeah,
down the
Trailhead,
road,
exactly.
And then there's 2 other ones that are on that
But you see,
opened up.
I'm on the same wavelength as Scott here, because I talk to lots of my clients. You know, we do lots of retail, and you know, so if you're a pub owner and you hear there's another pub going in next door, they go, oh my God, this is bad, this is terrible. I go, are you kidding? This is great news.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that, but it's not an common
But like I said,
attitude.
in the glebe, the flip side of this, and you know, I've been a guest speaker at the glebe Business Improvement BIA, and it's, you know, some of the conversations I had there is that people were, well, what's going to happen? This is going to put me out of business, because and they do in a lot of ways. And I'm not just saying
there was a lot of pushback to OSEC for that.
Absolutely, and it's, you know, but it's an interesting concept, and it goes back to, like I said, the unfortunate complacency. And I don't know if it's a government town, because no one's really ever been forced to, at least I know from my side of the table in business and marketing, no one's ever truly been forced to market anything in Ottawa, right? It's the concept that you start a business, it's either you just simply need to get on a approved government list as a vendor and you start getting work, and if you have a retail scenario, you're feeding or being fed by the people that work in the government and so on and so forth. And it's an interesting scenario in the glebe in that there are companies there, stores that are concerned that suddenly, well, oh my God, for the first time ever, a store could be around for 25 years, but now I'm going to be forced to compete, and they see that as a really bad thing.
Scott, I think it's more basic than that. I think it's an innate part of human psychology is that people fear change. People fear the unknown.
Yeah.
If you're and think about it. If you're running a business, wherever you are, Bank Street, wherever, and if you have a good business and it's working well, and it's working well year in, year out, and something's going to happen, and you have a chance to influence whether it does or doesn't happen, if you're comfortable with what you are, you don't aspire to a lot more, you're very cozy, you're very comfortable with what you are, you don't want to take a risk. So why, your friend with the bicycle shop, well, he's a gutsy guy, and he's saying, look, this will make my business even better. But I think most people would say, geez, I don't want to mess with this. I'm good, I'm happy, and I don't want to take a chance. I'll forego the better that could be to make sure that I don't have the worst that it could be also. I'm very comfortable where I am, and it's the unknown.
But isn't it interesting, though, as well, is that we had a conversation at the beginning of this, is that, the difference between sort of the entrepreneurial spirit and, say, like the more sort of structured management side of things, is that, as anyone that starts a business, whether it's in the Glebe, Bank Street, Westboro, whatever, or anywhere in the world, there is that entrepreneurial spirit and risk-taking that happens. 100%. Where does it start to decline, right? Is there a spot where entrepreneurs kind of hit as well, I'm kind of comfortable now?
I think it is derived largely from personality as opposed to age. It could be age-related too, but it's largely personality derived. There's a well-known psychological phenomenon called fear of loss, desire for gain. And the fear of loss is much stronger than desire for gain. And it supports both of your position. But some people are reverse psychology, have the reverse psychology. Your friend who runs the bike shop and entrepreneurs, which is one of the reasons why family companies transitioning to professional management have often not been successful in that transition. Because professional management are motivated more by fear of loss than desire for gain. Entrepreneurs are the reverse of that. Let me come back one more time, Roger, to you as we have only a few minutes left here. Let's talk about Roger's legacy. You're retiring as the CEO of the Minto Group in October. You're still going to be active. I understand that.
I call it transitioning rather than retiring.
Yeah, fair enough. You're transitioning. I buy that. But
what do you say to your wife?
Oh, she knows that. She's been involved. And she says, transition, all you want is don't stay home. You're getting up at the same time you do every morning, and you're getting the hell out of the house. Don't start coming into my kitchen and trying to reorganize, because I organize all the time. She says, don't start organizing the house and the kitchen. Things won't, we've had a very successful 28-year marriage, and we don't want to put that in jeopardy. So
absolutely not. But let's talk about. I think OSAG and what you've done at Lansdowne will be a legacy project for you personally.
Well, absolutely. We've said this, that this is for each of us. John's been here and done a lot. John Ruddy, John you. We say this is our gift to the citizens of Ottawa. You asked what the 8% return, which is low. Where do we get what's above that? That's our legacy back to the citizens of Ottawa, who have been outstandingly supportive of all of our businesses over the years.
Yeah. Well, John runs Trinity, and Bill Shankman, obviously Shankman Corporation, and Jeff Hunt, the 67s, and you've been running Minto for 22 years.
And John Pugh has had a very successful business and sold his business a number of years ago, and has been running the Fury. So all of us see this as in a very large measure as a giving back, as a legacy to the community.
Yeah, and can you point to some other things that through your career that you look back and you say, you know, those are things I'm glad I did them, and I'm glad I was part of it. I know for a fact that you were very helpful and important in when I was trying to bring back the senators and when Rod was trying to keep them here. So I certainly think of that as part of your legacy.
Well, look, I'm very proud. Particularly, I don't go around boasting of activities I do within Minto or outside of Minto, but I am very proud of my participation in helping a lot of community organizations in Ottawa achieve their goals. So, in particular, Algonquin, I was very involved with their fundraising campaign for their new Algonquin Center for Construction Excellence on Woodruff. So that spectacular building.
Incredible building.
So I was very proud of my leading role there. I was very proud of the leading role I took in the expansion for the Ottawa Hospital's Cancer Center, a 2020 campaign. You know, so a lot of activities in there. Very proud of a lot of activities within the Jewish community. Obviously, my involvement with the creation of the campus on Broadview Avenue for the Ottawa Jewish community. So, I mean, lots of activities in that area, which I'm proud about. I'm proud, obviously, about what Minto has done over the years in terms of most people said that when Irving passed away, that he cast such a giant shadow over all of us that we would not be in business 6 months after he died.
Wow.
He was just such a giant, and I had this from many people that just said, you know, you guys can't hold a candle.
That's terrible.
To Irving. Well, they didn't say it meanly to us.
That is a mean thing, though.
But it was more out of respect to Irving, because he was a giant. And I said, my first meeting with my family after Irving passed away, and we're all sitting there kind of in stunned silence, and so looking around, and I said two things to everybody. I said, look, number one, you know, I don't want anyone to ever say when we do something, that's not the way Irving would have done it. The truth is, nobody knew what Irving was going to do. He was an incredible contrarian, and nobody knew what he was going to do when he was alive. So I'd be damned if I'm going to try to figure out, well, how would Irving have done this now that he's not around?
Yeah.
He taught me his culture, his values, his way of thinking, etc., and we've respected a lot of that over the years. But I don't want to be accused, well, that's not the way Irving would have done it, number one. And number two, this is a lesson for family businesses, is you don't have to try to individually top what Irving did. I don't think I have anywhere near the intelligence level that he did, or his knowledge of everything that he did. But I don't have to. I had my family with me. So I said to him, it's the old, you know, sticks, you know, analogy, that if you take one stick, you can break it. You put two together, not so much. 3, 4, 5, 6.
That's really
By
good.
the time you get 8 sticks,
you can't
do it. So I said, if we stay together and we stay strong, I think collectively we'll be able to do okay, and we might be able to, you know, match what his legacy was. And here we are, you know, 22, 23 years later, we've stayed strong, we've stayed together, and I think
that is the key thing, staying together. My dad, before he passed away, I did ask Jack Firestone, have you got any advice? And he turned to me and he said, stick together.
Right.
Those were his last words.
Yes.
And I've loved that, and I think I respect what you just said an awful lot. Roger, you have 3 kids. How would you feel if they wanted to be involved in Minto and they wanted to take you know, some management or leadership role there in the next generation?
What we've done with our children is exactly what my parents did with us, is that they encouraged us to follow our hearts, whatever we wanted to do. And as long as we were happy in doing that, and fulfilled, and they were being productive and giving back to society, that's good enough. My father, like, I started out actually as being a real estate lawyer for a period of time, and then brought into the family fold by Irving. You know, I've had siblings that work in the business, some that haven't, and it's a question of you shouldn't be working in the family business if you don't have a passion for what the family business does. It's not going to end well. It's not going to end well for the family.
I agree.
It's not going to end well for the business. It's not going to end well for the individual. So we've set up a family office in the last 3 years that is to encourage and develop the educational and social development of our next generation to pursue whatever it is that they want to pursue. What we want them to do at a minimum is to be good shareholders of Minto down the line, so that when our generation is not there, at a minimum, as good shareholders, they elect a good board of directors who can then have management to ensure the continuation of Minto. The hope is that somewhere in the 17 of third generation members, that there's at least 1 or 2 that are going to want to come into Minto, and they'll be good, and they'll work their way up to some form of leadership in the business. But we'll see. That's still sometimes a
Well, I think that's a great go forward plan. And the last thing I'd like to ask you, Roger, apart from saying thank you again for joining the Firestone Williams Report today, is if you were advising young people today in their 20s, you know, is real estate a good investment for young people? Has you know, the best days of real estate come and gone? You know, if you buy your own home, you buy a condo, you buy some industrial condo for that matter. I mean, are the best days of real estate behind?
Absolutely not. I mean, if you look at the list of Canada's top 100 wealthiest families, and you'll see the number of people involved in real estate. When real estate, in terms of the economic activity of Canada as a whole, is a fairly small percentage, but in terms of the people who've made their wealth in real estate, it's outstandingly high. My brother Robert made a great statement many years ago: housing will never become obsolete. Minto could become obsolete in the housing industry.
Great statement, Roger. I can't thank you enough, and Scott, to you again for coming on a wintry, blustery day. I won't say what you thought of the driving conditions, but they're pretty awful. And again, to you, Scott, and of course Roger, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks as always.